Did you know that a single misunderstanding about GST could cost you tens of thousands of dollars? That's right. You know that no GST listing on a resale of new construction might not be exactly what it seems. And if you're not really careful, the CRA could come knocking hard, demanding their cut. You know, most buyers and sellers, they have no idea that this trap exists. And it's one of the most expensive mistakes that you can make in Canadian real estate. So, you know, imagine thinking that everything is fine only to get slapped with a tax bill after the deal is done. That's not a situation that you want to find yourself in. But don't worry, I've got your back, because in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how GST works in these transactions and why so many people get caught off guard, and of course, how you can protect yourself from losing out on thousands of dollars. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around until the end on this one, because I am saving the most crucial advice for the end. The one thing that almost everyone gets wrong about GST when reselling new construction properties. Now, by the way, really quick, if you're new here, my name is Glen Hopkins, and I create videos all about Canadian real estate, especially in the Vancouver and Fraser Valley area. So if that is something you're interested in, please be sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you're not going to miss out on any of my upcoming videos. And also, if you would like to chat about buying or selling your home, there is a link in the description box below where you can schedule a call with me. And just know, of course, there's no pressure, there's no obligation. I'm really easy to chat with, and I'm just really here to help you and answer any questions that you might have. Also, I should say that if you're anywhere else in North America and you need a fantastic agent, I can personally connect you with somebody that is trusted and someone that I would use myself in a real estate transaction. All right, so that said, let's dive in, because missing this information, it could actually cost you tens of thousands of dollars. So let's start with the biggest misconception. No GST. No GST. You know, you're often going to see listings for newly constructed properties advertising that the GST has already been paid. But here's the cold, hard truth. If that property hasn't been occupied as a primary residence or rented out, GST still applies. Now, many sellers and even their agents, they don't realize this. They assume that because the property was already purchased once, that the GST is all done and over with. But I'm going to tell you, the CRA sees things very differently. You see, as long as the property is considered new residential property, GST is payable on the sale again. And here's where things get kind of messy. You know, if you're a buyer, you might think that the GST is included, only to find out at the last minute, or even worse, after closing, that you're on the hook for an extra 5%. And that could cost tens of thousands of dollars on top of what you have already agreed to pay. Now, if you're the seller and you didn't properly disclose this to the buyer, guess what? That GST bill could come straight out of your pocket. Now, either way, someone is going to be losing out on a lot of money, and it's all because of a simple misunderstanding. Now, you might be thinking that this sounds like double taxation and kind of wondering how they can do that. So let me explain. First of all, it's not actually double taxation, although it kind of feels that way. So I'm going to explain by way of an example here to help you understand how it works. Let's say that you buy a pre-construction condo for $750,000. As part of that deal, you're going to pay $37,500 in GST to the developer. And then a year later, immediately after it completes, you sell the condo for, say, $800,000. Now, in this situation, the CRA says that GST applies to the full sales price of $800,000, meaning that the buyer owes $40,000 in GST, or a $2,500 amount more than what you originally paid. So that extra $2,500 isn't double taxation. It's the CRA collecting GST on the increased value or the lift of the property. But here's the kicker. as the seller, you are responsible for collecting and remitting that $40,000 to the CRA. And if you don't do that, they're going to come after you for that full amount. Now, in just a minute, I'm going to explain how you can avoid this tax trap and how you can get back the GST that you paid when you originally purchased that condo. But first, as you can see, it's pretty important to understand when GST applies and of course when it doesn't. And this is where most people get tripped up. You see, a property only becomes used residential property and therefore exempt from GST when it's been, one, occupied as a primary residence by the owner, or two, rented out to tenants who use it as their primary residence. If neither of these two things have happened, the CRA still considers that property to be new, even if it's been sold once before. So if no one's ever lived in it, it's still subject to GST. Now, this misconception, thinking that a property automatically becomes used after the first sale, is why so many people get caught off guard. So, if you're selling a property and GST applies, what's your responsibility? Well, here's the part that shocks so many sellers. It's actually your job to notify the buyer if GST applies and to collect it. And if you don't, and the buyers refuse to pay, it's going to be coming out of your pocket. So, imagine selling your condo for $800,000 only to realize after the fact that you owe $40,000 in GST to the CRA. That's not just inconvenient, it's financially devastating. Now, to avoid this, there are two things that you need to do. Number one, you want to make sure that you register for a GST number before the sale. And secondly, you want to make sure that your purchase agreement clearly states that GST is payable on top of the purchase price. But knowing your responsibilities is only half the battle. Let's talk a minute about the steps that you can take to avoid falling into this trap altogether. Now, the easiest way to avoid this nightmare is to get professional advice early. You're going to want to talk to your accountant, talk to your lawyer, and yes, to your real estate agent, but make sure that they actually understand these rules. So if you're flipping a property, you want to register for a GST number as soon as possible. This is going to allow you to claim a credit for the GST that you paid on the original purchase. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck fronting the entire amount before you can apply for that refund. Now, here's the scariest part. If you don't handle this correctly, you could end up losing tens of thousands of dollars, not because you didn't try to do the right thing, but because you didn't have the right information at the right time. And this brings us to the most crucial mistake that sellers make. The single biggest mistake that you can make is assuming that GST does not apply. It's not just buyers who get caught off guard here. Sellers, they often have no idea that it's their responsibility for collecting and remitting GST. And this isn't something that you want to find out after the fact either. If you don't handle this correctly, you could end up owing tens of thousands of dollars to the CRA. And, as you might know, they don't mess around when it comes to collecting taxes. And by the way, if you are thinking about selling your house and you want to know what it's worth in today's market, there is a link in the description box below. Go ahead and click that link. It's going to take you to my website. You can fill out a really simple form and I will follow up with you and I'll let you know what it is worth in today's market. And again, I should say no obligation. I will reach out with some information for you. You can take it and do whatever you want with it, okay? Okay, so listen, there's so much more to know about taxes and how they can affect your real estate transactions. And if you found this information helpful, you're definitely going to want to subscribe to the channel and check out my next video where I'm going to cover another new tax trap that the BC government has just announced that could cost you even more.